welcome to Scorched Earth and a general reading for the sign of Aquarius, Sun, Moon or Ascendant for the month of June 2023. I hope you are. I'm using the Shadow Light Tarot for you today. Before we begin, if the reading resonates with you and you'd like to go a little bit deeper, there will be an extended that you can access at the end. That's link number 1 in the description box. The second link is to my private community, the Order of the Phoenix, over on the Circle. You can get access to all of the extended content over there for no extra cost, and get to meet and hang out with an extraordinary group of people. They really are quite exceptional human beings. I love the bones of them all. So if that's something that's interesting to you, you know what to do with that link. And let's have a look and see what's going on with you, Aquarius. Can I have 3 cards for Aquarius, please? Oh. Deck is being really quite slippery today. There we go. So we have the 7 of Wands. Let's just flip that around so you can see what I'm looking at. 7 of Wands in your recent past. Current energy for Aquarius, please. Thank you. We have the Magician. Very nice. That's a Gemini energy for me. You can... it does correlate to Virgo as well because they're both ruled by Mercury, but it seems like a very Gemini kind of energy to me, so it's the one I tend to go with most often. And what's coming towards Aquarius, please? For June, we have the Page of Cups. At the bottom of the deck, we have the 5 of Wands, followed by the 10 of Wands and the 10 of Swords, and then the 2 of Wands. Now I find that quite interesting. This is a really extraordinary deck. If you put them out in order, they make one big scene. It's such an involved piece of work. I really, really like it. Anyway, look at this. We've got 2 cards of double endings, and they're not comfortable ones, I'll be honest, Aquarius. Right? The 10 of Swords is difficult. I mean, traditionally it's associated with things like humiliation and betrayal and all those kind of things. So certainly there's a notion of being left for dead with these 10 swords sticking out of oneself here. But because it's a 10, it does represent an ending in preparation for a beginning. And I think whenever the 10s come out, it's always worth bearing that in mind, in the same way that we see with the Death card. You know, when the Death card does talk about endings, but it's more that transformation between states. And so the 10s represent a culmination of a particular cycle that is coming to an end in preparation for you to start something new. Now, like I said, we've got the 5 of Wands over the top first, and as ever in the 5 of Wands, it's difficult to know if there's a bit of play fighting, a bit of sparring going on here, or whether there's an actual disagreement. You know, we often talk about this card in terms of conflict, and I see it most often, to be fair, in terms of a sense of personal conflict. You know, there's ways in which we're being pulled in lots of different directions, and certainly, as an Aquarius, you will have, I would think, been experiencing that in the latter half of May as that grand fixed cross was forming in the sky between the nodes, North and South node, and then, oh, what is it now? I cannot remember. Anyway, North and South node one way and 2 other planets the other way. It's sort of suggesting that something's got to give somewhere, right? And it's been tense and possibly really quite unpleasant, but it's had you arrive at a place in June, crossroads possibly, but certainly kind of scouting around with this idea that there's a decision that needs to be made, and the decision is the direction of travel. Frankly, it was what it comes down to. There are possibilities, there are ways in which you can go, but first you've got to do a bit of internal scouting. What means the most to you? What brings you the most value? What has the most potential in future moving forwards? That's the kind of energy that I'm getting off the 2 of Wands here. And I've talked about the 2 of Wands in terms of those kind of micro decisions that we make every day. I read something, I saw a meme on Instagram yesterday, I think it was. and the exact wording of it actually eludes me now, but it was something along the lines of it coming down to your habits, right? What you're capable of achieving in your life isn't about the big dreams and the big visions you have. It's about the small things. It's about the habits that you create on the day-to-day, the things that you do habitually, that decide whether you are going to succeed at something big or whether it's going to be something considerably, an order of magnitude smaller than that. The combination of the conflict, which feels internal, about the right way to go, the right way to do things, what might potentially represent in the short term some hard work, or the leaving behind of some aspect of your life that's not working for you anymore, to try and then work out from there where you should be going. I mean, it's quite interesting. We notice that we've got the Seven of Cups sitting behind that. This is a card of emotional confusion. It's sometimes a card that talks about things being a little overwhelming, but because it's 7, which in numerology is actually a number I kind of loosely associate with Aquarius anyway. You can't quite map them onto each other. It's got shades of Aquarius and shades of Scorpio. There's that sense that everything is possible, but there are some compromises that need to be made along the way. And for you, the compromise might actually be the belief in yourself that you can do the thing in the first place. It could simply come down to something like that. But this Two of Wands feels really, really important. Because if the Ace of Wands is the initiation, it's the spark of creativity, the spark of passion, the spark of something that's going to get you to live differently, then the Two of Wands becomes that state of, well, what do I actually want? What does the future look like for me? How does the... what's it going to look like when I do those little habits every day? Am I likely to get to where I want? I mean, I'm kind of waffling at this point, so I'm just going to pop these down here. And let's get a deck out to clarify. And we can put some meat on the bones of this. So, I'm just going to use the Waite-Smith to clarify here. We start off in your recent past with the Seven of Wands. And the meaning of this is, is really quite clear. We've got this chap here, ready, perched on a little log. And he's being attacked by 6 other wands. We assume he's being attacked. They're coming in towards him, and he's adopting a defensive stance. It can talk about being protective, but it can also talk about being a little bit guarded and being a little defensive, possibly. But it's the 6 of Wands that's drawing my eye more than anything else. And the 6 of Wands speaking as it does about success, and it cannot, in that instant, it can't really be read in isolation, because for some reason the 5 and the 6 of Wands have become almost fused in my head, in so much as they belong together. You can't really have one without the other, right? You can't win at something, you can't be successful at something without having first at least competed or struggled or done something along those lines, right? Saturn in Leo, 5 of Wands. And we have already seen that for you, wherever it's gone. I've just lost it. I'll just put it back wrong. Yeah, the 5 of Wands was over the top. Yeah, there we go. Completely forgotten about that. But correspondingly, what's the point of struggle unless you're to win? If you're not to conquer it in some sort of way. I think the thing with the tarot is that sometimes the presence of things are implied, even if they're not actually there. And the fact that the 6 of Wands is what is drawing my eye more than anything else here. It's not about this one wand that you've got in your hand that brings it up to the 7. It's about reflection on the 6. Now, you could say this is, how have I stood in the way of my own success in the past? Perhaps there's been something about the notion of success that doesn't quite sit right with me, and what has been a defensive energy against the nature of success is actually something akin to self-sabotage. Let's get some clarifiers out here. Tell me about this Seven of Wands, please. Ten of Swords. Interesting. And the Five of Cups. With the Four of Cups at the bottom of the deck there, but let's continue. Tell me about the Magician. And we can keep going. Knight of Swords, that's Gemini energy again. And the Ace of Pentacles. I like this. Tell me about this Page of Cups. Nine of Cups. Amazing. And the Page of Wands. Delicious. Right. We have the King of Pentacles at the bottom of the deck. That is Taurus energy. All day long. It's about delayed gratification. It's about how we apply ourselves to some sort of long-term goal, right? Because Taurus is a builder. Taurus wants to construct things. Taurus actually wants a great deal of stability and security in their life, and they're willing to put in the effort to create that. But the King of Pentacles also talks to me specifically about responsibility. And I mean, all of the kings in their own way are responsible for something. They're certainly responsible for their subjects, right? But it's in the way that it's expressed. For the King of Pentacles, it is about creating that environment within which you thrive and everybody else thrives. It's about being almost responsible for other people, for the resources that are necessary for other people to thrive as much as you. And look at that, we have the Queen of Pentacles sat underneath, which is Capricorn energy. And the pair of them work together to nurture, in the first instance, the planting of the seed, which then grows. But also to kind of construct cardinal earth points the way. It's that idea of that's what I need to do, right? That's how I create my stability. That's how I create my security. And the King of Pentacles is the one that actions that. Passive, active. And they're working here together in tandem. But then we have this Five of Wands. And this sense that you're being pulled in several different directions. And maybe even internally pulled in several different directions. Because you don't necessarily know what that future looks like at this point. Or at least haven't. Maybe you have responsibilities, maybe you have duties, maybe they're parental, maybe you've got, maybe you've got parents who rely on you. Maybe there's some sort of sense of responsibility that you hold. Maybe you're the boss of a company, right? This King of Pentacles would be the CEO. But there's a decision-making process going on here, and it is one that is attempting to create some sort of underlying stability for the future. We're talking about the creation of foundations, right? Is the King and Queen of Pentacles get to enjoy the fruits of their labour down the line. But both of them talk about delayed gratification. Both of them talk about the need to nurture and to water and to feed and to do all of these things. No shortcuts ever with these two when they come along. They realise, they understand that there is a season for everything and there's a time to do everything. And you can't rush it. Now, when you come back over here, and we've got these 6 wands that are really, really standing out in my head. 5 of wands here, 7 of wands here. What we've got is a kind of contemplation of the 6. How have you stood in the way of your 6 up until this point? And we've got the 10 of swords appearing again, as it did in here. Talking about an ending, navigating an ending, negotiating your way through an ending. Some sort of thing that has come to completion that isn't necessarily very comfortable, isn't very enjoyable. And I think it's an internal realization for you, Aquarius. As someone who's very visionary, as someone who is continually thinking about the future and how to best navigate your way to it. It stands to reason that you would be very focused on that. But I feel like what you've noticed recently is these internal obstacles. the ways in which you have sabotaged yourself without even realizing that you've done it. You know, the Five of Cups talks about, essentially, it talks about focusing on the wrong thing. It can talk about lots of other things too. It can talk about bereavement and loss generally. And, you know, that sense of bereavement and loss doesn't have to happen through death. It can happen through lots and lots of ways. You know, I feel like the grief that we talk about with bereavement can also be experienced in a lesser way with divorce and separation and things like that. You know, maybe it's even losing your job, something along those kind of lines, right? Because when that grief hits, it's completely all-encompassing, right? There is nothing else in the world other than that which we have lost. The focusing on the wrong thing aspect of it is not noticing that 2 cups remain, right? This is, in some ways, terminal, right? It's not coming back. These cups are not going to right themselves, and whatever was in the cups is not going to mystically shimmer out of the ground and pour itself back into the cups. It is gone. It is over. So the question is, are you going to stand there and keep staring at it, or are you going to do something else? Are you going to begin something else? You're going to initiate something else? Well, in the first instance, grief is a process, so you have to allow yourself to work through it. And whatever has ended here, and I do feel like there's this kind of weird, like, detachment. I mean, it's not that weird because it's you, right? But, yeah, kind of here. It doesn't feel like necessarily the thing that is ending is, or has ended, has happened right now. It feels like it could have happened in the past, or it could have happened relatively recently, but it's only really now the full consequences of that are revealed. Tell me about the swords and this. Yeah, look, 5 of Cups again. And the 9 of Wands. The 7 of Cups at the bottom of the deck. So we've got, again, the 7 of Cups. It's followed, fuck me, look at this, by the 3 of Swords and the 8 of Swords. So there's pain, there's mental restriction, there's a sense of feeling trapped, perhaps by one's own pain, certainly leading to a level of confusion. It really does give me this vibe about it being something that you have noticed about yourself, or perhaps the consequences of something that you have noticed that aren't necessarily in the here and now, but are kind of rooted a little bit further back. And it's where the sabotage thing comes in, because as your world has, as your version of reality is kind of closed on itself a little bit, so that everything's become a little bit more linear. Maybe success means inevitably that there's the possibility of failure, right? Well, if you push yourself to do anything, to compete in any sort of field, in any sort of way ever, whether it's trying to get yourself a partner, you know, spouse, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, there's the possibility of you breaking up, right? If you get yourself a new job, there's always the possibility that you might get fired. You know, there's always a downside to every good thing that comes along. And I feel like somewhere along the line, what you've realised is that you kind of closed yourself off to the possibility of exploring X because of the corresponding risk of experiencing Y. And you haven't seen that up until this point. But now you have seen it. You see how it has coloured the way that you have approached things that would make you feel like you were successful. And in some ways, I feel like you've shrouded it in this cloak of resiliency, right? This is resilience. This is how I cope. This is how, you know, we get through the day, is by not allowing ourselves to invest too much in something else because of the corresponding capacity for failure or loss or something like that. And what appears to be happening here, Aquarius, is that you're having a massive fucking breakthrough. And it's huge. Because the card you've got here is the Magician. Like I said, it's, for me specifically, it's Gemini energy. And sometimes I can't work Virgo into it in my head. And I know it's a thing, but it doesn't fit. No, and it's the whole abracadabra thing, right? I create as I speak. That seems to me to be a very Gemini proposition right there. And we have it here with the Knight of Swords. I feel like there's this new enlightened way of thinking that's rushing in to fill the void that has been created by the Ten of Swords. The Ten of Swords being the realization of the way that you have coped with an ending, or the way that you have held yourself back from the possibility of something good because of the possibility of it going wrong. Right? It's like you've become detached from something, but there's been emotions in the center of there somewhere, and it's just like, well, I'm just not going to pay any attention to that. I'm going to do this over here. But it's shut all sorts of doors, and now you're starting to see that those doors have been closed, and you're like, no, fuck that. I'm going to start kicking these doors in and seeing what is sitting on the other side of it. And the Magician is the understanding that we need to have all of the elements on the table in the first instance, right? So we have the swords and the wands and the cup and the pentacles, right? We're talking about balance, but we also need to combine that with our intent. And I think what's been difficult is knowing how you wanted to move forwards, what it was that, what is your star in the sky? What is your end goal, dream, goal, aspiration? Because it feels like it's expanding. It feels like it's got more layers to it now than it had prior to all of this stuff happening here. And it's not necessarily because more opportunities have presented themselves in the here and now for you, and you're like, all right, well, I'll wander down this road. It's more about the realization that there's some sort of internal battle that's been going on for the longest time. And now you see it where you did not see it before. And the subconscious is always pulling this shit on us, right? That's what's going on. Just don't think about that. That's painful. That hurts the ego. We don't like that very much. We'll just pretend that doesn't exist. And when you try and think about it, like the subconscious kind of swerves its way around it, finds any way that it can to bypass it. But for some reason, it seems to have been planted directly in front of your eye now. And the Magician says, you have all the tools that you need, right? Actually, all of the elements are on the table. Elements that you thought were missing, including the cups. They might not be quite as powerful as you would like them to be right now, but I do think it's about the level of investment in it that has been holding you back. I'm trying not to jump around here, but I'm seeing it kind of reflected in all of the cards as we're talking here. So the Magician is this point of personal power where we go, actually, we can manifest the life that we want. I realise now that the reason why I haven't been able to manifest exactly what I want up until now is because I haven't been working with all of the information. Somehow the subconscious has kind of pushed some of that aside, and I've only been working with, say, the swords and the wands and the pentacles. Maybe it's even the swords and the wands, who knows? It hasn't been very balanced up until this point. And in that way, that seems to have been very much the case in the month of May. We've all had a bit of time to sit back and reflect and look at ourselves. Now, if you don't know what it is that if you didn't know what it was that you wanted to manifest, all that you knew was that you've been kind of sabotaging yourself a little bit because we don't want to be too successful, because that might be difficult. Maybe it's even for some of you, it was a case of, kind of falling into a rather predictable lifestyle. Something that felt like it was, it was just a little bit too orthodox for it to be the right way forward for you. But I feel like there's been some aspect of an understanding of self that's been missing from. It's the information that's been missing, right? It's the thing that you haven't seen up until now. Now you see it. It's like, holy fuck, I can do all of these things. Actually, it doesn't matter if I fail. It doesn't matter if I don't get it the first time. Maybe it's even like, I never even thought that I could possibly do that thing over there. But now I've removed the internal obstacles. Now I've looked at the things that are have been causing conflict in me, and I see how I've been sabotaging myself, and I see more specifically where it has come from. Releasing it and letting it go has cleared the way for me to start doing something altogether more magical. And we've got the Knight of Swords, which for me is about the transmission of information, right? So it's the way that thoughts zip around in your head. It's the way you talk. It's the way that other people talk to you. I mean, it's how you communicate generally. So it's as much as how you talk as it is about how you listen. And it's interesting, I don't hear people talking about that aspect of it as often as I would like, right? It's all very well to verbally vomit out everything that's in your head, but listening to what's going on is as important. And I think realizing that there's been some sort of filter in your mind that has screened out a lot of the things that now seem screamingly obvious to you has been a bit of a head mash. But the important thing is that the information is now flowing, and correspondingly we have the Ace of Pentacles, which is saying now it's possible for you to start investing some of your attention into this, and perhaps more than just your attention. I mean, where attention goes, energy flows, right? But as energetic currency, the Ace of Pentacles can represent your time, your care, your effort, your money, your love, your energy generally, your attention certainly. And it's the beginning of something. It's the beginning of something that you are bringing into being, which you also made sure that you didn't bring into being for whatever reason back here, right? The energy is moving, the energy is here, the energy is free. And we have literally just moved into Gemini season as I'm recording this. So it could well be that this is going to represent somewhat of an uptick in the way that your energy is moving generally, right? The way that you're approaching new concepts, new ways of thinking, new ways of investing your energy. Tell me about this Ace of Pentacles, please. Four of Wands. Oh, that's very nice indeed, because the Four of Wands is the creation of a new foundation. And we have the Justice card here. Now, I mean, this Grand Fixed Cross that I was talking about before, very much related to, it gives it very karmic kind of overtones, but it's very much related to our destiny. And it's been, particularly for the fixed signs, a way of tweaking what has been a fixed and rigid mindset about a particular number of things. I'll go back here for that. And providing clarity, giving us insight. And some of it's not comfortable. I mean, I got some insights over the course of May. And into actually just the way sometimes that I come across, particularly when I'm angry about things. And I was like, wow, I haven't been like that for years, but, quite a volatile personality, quite tempestuous. And seeing it with the eyes that I have now, we realise, for me personally, that I actually don't need a shout, ever, to get my point across. I don't have to attack when I am feeling attacked. I can actually just stand in a power all of my own and have an authority that doesn't have to raise its voice to be heard, right? It's just solid, it's stable, it's there. That's the way that this has come across to me during this period. How it's come across to you and how it may be unfolding for you is realising quite how far you have quite how much you have held yourself back, and the underlying reasons for it. And what's going on here is an adjustment, it's a tweak, and it's like, actually, I'm going to show up slightly differently. I'm going to embrace these both sides of me. That which I didn't want to look at over here. The way that I was focusing on the wrong thing instead of kind of pulling out and looking at the big picture, which ultimately, Aquarius, is what you're designed to do. But the big picture of you, not just the big picture of what it is that you're trying to do. I like this because it seems like you've spun on a sixpence from this very difficult energy here to this very, very free, inspired, creative energy here. Now, I was saying about the tens there, they're creating the space. The Two of Wands is, well, what are you going to do with this space? What are you going to fill it with now? And it's right here. And it certainly seems to be aligning you with something really quite profound. We've got the King of Pentacles sitting at the bottom of this deck as well, so he's making a double appearance in terms of what it is that you are wanting to build for yourself in the future. What is it that you're looking to create? I do not believe that. What the fuck? You've seen me sat here with these cards. I haven't done anything with that, right? Queen and King of Pentacles, Queen and King of Pentacles. I love tarot. It's just fucking awesome. I had a vague, and that's why I looked. I was like, oh, wouldn't it be interesting if the Queen of Pentacles was sat underneath there? And she is. It is about duty. It is about responsibility. It is about the way that we show up for ourselves and the way that we show up for other people. But it is about investment. And that is coming through really strongly here. It's about the investment in others. It's about the investment in you, in your circumstances, in your environment, in everything. Right? What's been missing is not the thing that you lost a long time ago, but your willingness to invest in the new. Right? Your willingness to put yourself out there and potentially lose. Like I said, you know, not doing X because you might lose Y. It just doesn't work anymore. And in fact, I think what's perhaps so I've heard the word mediocrity, and I think that that's exactly what's laying out here. It's almost like, in some ways, because you didn't want to follow an orthodox path, or you didn't want to do something the way that everybody else did it, right? And you'd be perhaps being quite rigid and adhering to this idea that you have to do everything differently to everybody else for it to be original and authentic. It's kind of missing the point that you are original and you are authentic. And when you bring your full self to any situation, it doesn't matter if it's almost an identical path that somebody else has taken. It's going to be different because it's you. It's like when I started this channel, I really didn't expect it to go anywhere. Like I've said before, like I only really started it so that I could practice reading for other people. In retrospect, I don't know why the videos were public then, because I could have just left them private. But like, certainly it wasn't my intention for it to go anywhere, because in the back of my head at all times was well, there are literally 50,000 fucking tarot readers on YouTube. How do you ever get yourself seen in that sort of situation? And I said, well, I'm going to do it anyway. I'm just going to do it. Just going to practice reading in I'm going to find my authentic voice while I'm doing this thing. So yeah, I mean, the truth still remains. There are 50,000 other tarot readers on YouTube, but none of them read like me. And that's not because I'm special, you know, any better than any of those. It's because I use my voice, and that is specific to me. Nobody else has had the life experiences that I've had in the order that I had them over the time frame that I've had them. And so this has created a very particular way of approaching the cards for me. Doesn't take away from anyone else, but everyone else doesn't take away from me either. And because I was willing to invest in the act of doing it, rather than going, well, there's no fucking point, right? Because I might invest loads of myself into this and then it get nowhere, and then I'll be devastated. I just did it anyway. And I feel that same kind of energy for you here, Aquarius. It's kind of like the realization that you are a unique little snowflake, and it doesn't matter what you do, even if it is the same as what everybody else is doing, it's going to be different, and it's going to be uniquely you and special because of that. And whatever it was that was holding you back before, it doesn't exist now. And when we move into June, we've got the Page of Cups. Now, Page of Cups is for me, it's a new emotional approach to something. Perhaps it's a new approach to your emotions, depending on the way that you look at it. Whereas the Ace, they're both kind of initiations in their own way, but the Ace is something so new that you haven't experienced it before, right? And for me, it feels like this level of investment into the creation of something new, right? Allowing the energy to flow and allowing you to start looking at levels of manifestation that you have not experienced before. you didn't think you were capable of before, or they didn't hold any appeal to you before. The pages, in their own way, are also initiation, but they're taking something that you already have and they're tweaking it. They're sending it off in a different direction. It's about the maturation of that energy that already exists, rather than a big explosion of the new one coming in. So what we have is a tentative exploration of your own emotions around something. And we've got the Nine of Cups coming out straight underneath it. Now, you can't get a more different card to the Five of Cups than the Nine of Cups. I wouldn't say they were necessarily polar opposites, but you know, we've got someone here who's completely consumed by loss, all the fear of loss, and then we have someone here who's sat in a state of contentment with the cups that he's got here. Well, for me, the nines all talk about the management of the specific element that they represent, like our own personal individual management of that. So this would be about the management of your emotions, something that has been a little bit confusing for you up until this point. But I think that with everything that we've seen, it's the question of what actually really makes you happy, Aquarius. You know, what things have you not done because of the fear of being unhappy if you lost them? We're back to this idea again. And so this tentative exploration is of the conceptual basis of your Nine of Cups. Okay? So the experience of your emotions, yes, absolutely, but what it is that you are willing to give yourself to for the promise of being truly happy, being truly emotionally stable and level, right? Because if you've been managing your expectations, let's put it that way, of the kind of life that you can have, the kind of life that you can achieve, the way that you've gone about things, right? I have to do it this way. You've been, by definition, restricting yourself, right? I'm not talking about management as in management of expectations, as in you know, self-discipline or self-control or anything like that. It feels like it's more like self-restriction, and it's just ebbing away in favour of applying yourself to the idea that not only can you be happy, but that you deserve to be too. Yeah, I've got a client, and he sent me an email. I said that he'd been kind of rolling around this idea of happiness, like what is happiness to him. And he realised that what he'd been doing for the longest time was conflating fun with happiness, and that wasn't correct, because sometimes when the fun ends, he's not happy. And I thought it was really, really insightful, and something that a lot of people miss. Now, you know, we could add into fun like a sense of contentment, right? Yeah, everything's going the way I want it to do, right? Nothing's rocking the boat. Nothing's in any imminent danger of being pulled away from me in one way or another, right? I don't have a fear of that, therefore. And it sort of leads us to this position where happiness becomes the absence of things that piss you off, or the absence of things that make you afraid, and that's not actually what happiness is. I've been truly guilty of thinking the same myself. I spent years thinking like, well, if this just sorted itself out and this just sorted itself out and that stopped giving me a fucking hard time, then I would be happy. But I wouldn't. I'd just be in this state of neutrality. And the fear of almost amplifying the things that were causing me to be vexed stopped me from pushing out in any kind of direction towards what would truly bring value to me. You know, in some ways, actually, I attached a lot of that perceived value to things that actually aren't really that fucking important in the grand scheme of things. But I was working to my conditioning. I was working to what I was told was necessary for me to be successful. None of it actually brought me any joy. It all brought me a shitload of stress. I met some cool people along the way, and it was probably worth it for that. But I feel like it's only really in the last year or so that I have started thinking about happiness in terms of something personal to me. Not in terms of me hitting goals or, being seen as a big achiever or any of those things that were important to me in the past. But like, what actually makes me feel peaceful? What actually makes me look around and smile? Like yesterday, we had really beautiful weather yesterday, and we decided to have a little barbecue in the back garden. And put some music on the little stereo out there. And my kids were up, we brought the chessboard out. The kids were having a chess tournament, and it was lovely food. The dogs were running around, and the sun was shining, and I was just so happy in that moment. I felt so lucky in that moment. And luck's got nothing to do with it. Like, I've worked hard for all of these things, and I could walk around being afraid that should my work suddenly dry up, I wouldn't be able to sit in the garden on a Sunday afternoon because I have to go and get a crappy bar job again or something like that. But it was just the joy of the moment. And the question is, what is the joy of the moment for you, Aquarius? What makes you sit there and have you think to yourself, fuck, I'm lucky. This is awesome. What makes you swell up inside with that kind of feeling? Because this is what June is all about for you. It's about exploring that notion and beginning, if I can put it that way, to start working out, as we saw in the Two of Wands, what actions you have to take to put yourself in the place where you can start achieving that for yourself. Now that the internal barriers are removed, now that you've understood some of the things that have stood in the way of you really applying yourself to that, the question is, what do you want? What will make you happy? And how can you start heading towards that? Nine of Cups. We've got the Empress card. That for me is a card of abundance, but it's also a card of gratitude. It's a card of creating. The Empress is often depicted as pregnant. She's in this constant flow of creating life and then releasing it into the world. You've got the Six of Wands at the bottom of the deck here, and what's abundance to you? What makes you feel truly grateful to be alive? What makes you feel lucky? If you had those things, what would make you feel lucky? Because the chances are, I think it's something very different to what you thought it was. Possibly it's very different because, like me, you'd been working to an idea of what society thought represented happiness to you. In some ways, Aquarius, this is seeing you kind of stripping back your ideas about the future and kind of examining them and going, well, is this really real? Is this really me? Is this really what I want? Or do I want something entirely different? And if I do want something entirely different, what moves do I make now to make sure that I don't sabotage this and I actually dedicate everything I have to bringing this forward for myself? It feels ripe with potential, if I'm honest. And it all flows, it all stems from these insights that you got into yourself. Everything is possible. So what do you want? What is the future going to look like for you? How are you going to nurture it now? How are you going to plant the seed so that in years to come you can enjoy that? I love this, Aquarius. Right, I'm going to go over to Vimeo now and we're going to look at May specifically. A little less of this and a little more of this. So if you're interested in coming checking it out, you know what to do. The link's in the description box. Otherwise, I would really enjoy this month, Aquarius. It really does feel like a lot of the tensions of May have melted away, and like I said, there's so much potential here for you to explore. It's really exciting. Okay, know that I love you all very, very much, and I'll see you soon.